Okay, we are live again. So, if you are here for the first time, welcome. If you're here for the second or third time, welcome. We are currently writing this Victorian Gothic fantasy, and it's going really well so far. And today, the main goal. So, over the weekend, I was able to basically fix all of the issues with the super prompt that I was having. And so I was able to generate 3 whole chapters based on the story beats that I wrote in our last live stream on Saturday. And I edited 2 of those chapters, so they are good to go. I still have to edit 1 chapter from that. And the goal today is to write the story beats for 1 more chapter tonight and then edit that chapter and the one before it so that we so that is all done. And once I've written the story beats, I will go ahead and walk you through the entire all of the changes I made to the story beats and how, or to the super prompt, and how I was able to get that to work better for me. Still not perfect, of course, but nothing with AI really is. And for those of you who are probably wondering, yes, I have seen all of the announcements uh, regarding OpenAI and all of their cool announcements. I've played around with some things a little bit, but I'm not going to talk about that too much in this video, and I'm not going to change anything. I'm still going to use Claude because I want the tone of this entire book to be relatively consistent. So I'll be using the same techniques and the same models for the whole thing. But I will be probably staying up late tonight so I can create a video for you all about that and get it up tomorrow morning. So let's dive in. So this is chapter 4. It's the next chapter that we're working with. And the summary is: Mina runs into a child while she is out patrolling, and the child informs her that other children have been going missing. She decides to look into it. The child gives her a clue that leads her to believe she must attend some kind of discreet auction where the brides are looking to purchase something of value, but they don't know what. So there's some things about here that I'm not certain about. And so I'm actually going to run this through ChatGPT Claude a couple of times to get a few ideas. But for instance, I want to know, what is the clue that we give here? So brainstorm a couple ideas of what the clue could be in this chapter summary. It just mentions overhearing something about an exclusive event. Child has a torn piece of paper with some numbers and letters on it. Child describes having seen a fancy catalog or invitation before they went missing. The child talks about the buyers or bidders involved, making it clear an auction is happening. The child heard the kidnappers mention making a purchase or procurement, which points to an auction. The child has a symbol, logo, or marking on their clothing that represents an underground auction house or event. The child mentions overhearing terms like, all right, so these are all kind of the same. Not necessarily any of these speak to me, but it does actually give me some ideas. Something I did when I was editing one of the chapters is I had this child appear a little earlier, and she just like gives him a gold coin at some point and he runs off. And so now this will be like the next step where she interacts with him a little more. And so, and then also the smugglers that we dealt with in chapter 2, among other things, do some human trafficking. So maybe he would know something about that and could have overheard some things based on like some of the people he knows and stuff. So, um, so yeah, that did give me some ideas. So, all right, I have my dictation software ready, and I'm just going to start writing some of these story beats. Here we go. The next night, comma, Mina decides to go out on patrol again, comma, mostly because she is frustrated with Jonathan, comma, Dr. Seward, comma, and Arthur, period. Ever since she had gained her vampiric abilities, comma, she seemed to lose patience, period. Why talk about something when you could be out there doing something? Period. New line. Like always, comma, she is keeping to the shadows, comma, using the dark, smoky haze of London to her advantage. Period. This time, comma, she decides to go back to the scene of the slaughter, comma, where the smugglers were killed by another vampire. Period. She stays on the roofs in order to stay out of sight from any members of Scotland Yard or others that might be about. Period. New line. As she arrives at the scene, comma, sure enough, comma, it appears to have been cleaned up by the police. Comma, boarded up, comma, and with signs warning people to stay away. Period. One lone policeman is standing guard over the crime scene, comma, as it is late at night. Period. Mina sees this as a little bit of an oversight, comma, because she knows these parts can be extremely dangerous at night, comma, and likely needs more policemen, not less. Period. But it works to her favor. Period. New line. Continuing to climb across the rooftops, comma, she perches atop the warehouse itself, comma, looking down at the policeman standing guard far below. Period. She thinks about how she might be able to sneak into the warehouse and find any clues that she might have missed. Period. New line. But at that moment, comma, she sees in the distance a small figure running around the corner. Looking at the warehouse from around the corner, comma, just out of sight of the policeman. comma, but from Mina's vantage point, comma, she can make him out, period. It is the same young boy that she had met the night before, period. Why is he still about? Question mark. Hanging about here. Leaping almost silently from one building to the other, comma, she checks back to make sure that the policeman did not hear her. Period. But when she looks down at the young boy, comma, she notices he is looking up at her, period. She makes a mental note to work on her stealth, period. But the boy doesn't appear to be afraid, comma, as he stands up straighter and takes a step or two in her direction, period. She swiftly makes her way down motions to meet him a block away, comma, and from the roof to the street below, period. New line. When she finally meets the young boy, she asks him what he is doing here, comma, because it is dangerous, period. The young boy replies, that he is looking for his friends, period. She asks him about these friends, comma, and he lets her know that they all belonged to the smugglers at one point, comma, taken from their families on some islands far away, period. They managed to escape, comma, but now he hasn't seen his friends in some time. She notes he has a faint strong accent, but still speaks English fluently, comma, and she wonders if he is from some remote parts of Ireland or Scotland. She hasn't traveled far enough to be able to tell. And is growing concerned. Period. New line. Mina asks him how they escaped from the smugglers, comma, as she figured this would be a difficult thing to do, period. The boy tells her that a tall man, helped him, comma. But when Mina asks him more about this tall man, he refuses to tell her more, comma, saying only that he promised not to say anything, period. Mina lets it go for now, period, new line. She then asks him about the previous night, comma, and if he saw anything suspicious, period. He goes silent at that, comma, and Mina takes that to mean that maybe he did see something, comma, and it scared him. Period. She tries to reassure him that whoever it was he saw that night, comma, Mina will try to protect him. No. She will protect him from that person, period. He opens up a little bit, comma, saying he saw someone like her, comma, but not as nice, period. He describes the woman as having jet black hair, comma, thin and in lavish clothing, comma, like a noble woman. He describes her as quite the Mina experiences a bit of deja vu, comma, and is reminded of the time when her friend Lucy had become a vampire, comma, and had fed on children after everyone thought she was dead, period. That realization prompts her to think that maybe these friends of the child may have met a similar fate, period. She tells the boy to avoid that woman again if he sees her at all costs, comma, because she is very dangerous and will not hesitate to hurt the boy, period, new line. The boy doesn't seem to fear her as much, comma, and is beginning to talk more, period. He says that he's not scared of the scary lady, period. Comma. That he's not scared of anybody, period. Mina replies that that's good, comma, but he also needs to be cautious and careful, period. He replies that he is careful, period. He often overhears things because no one thinks to keep their mouth shut around him, comma, or he's able to sneak into places where others aren't expecting, comma, and overhear things, period. Mina says that's very nice, comma, but she would feel safer if he just got away from this neighborhood altogether, period. She tells him to find the tall friend that helped him before and stick with him, period. New line. The boy doesn't, ignores what she says and mentions that he overheard the smugglers talk about the flute that the lady was looking for, period. Mina is about to ask him how he knew about the flute, comma, but thinks better of it, period. Instead, comma, she asks him what he heard about the flute, period. The boy tells her, new line. The boy tells her that, comma, from what he could gather, comma, the flute is made of silver and is pretty plain, comma, and the smugglers weren't sure why it was worth so much to people, period. Apparently it's very old, comma, dating back hundreds of years, comma, maybe thousands, period. Mina asks if he heard where they were taking this flute. Comma, and the boy replies that they said something about an auction in Soho. Comma, and that someone had already paid them for several antiques that were planning to be sold at this auction. Period. New line. Mina asks the boy if he knows if the scary vampire lady knew about this auction too, comma, and he shrugs, comma, only saying that it appeared that the woman was in a big hurry and left, period. Mina says to herself that they have to assume this vampire knows about the auction. and will be present. Period. Though she is uncertain if the vampire, will simply barge in and take what she wants, comma, killing on in her way, comma, or if she will attend the auction more discreetly. Period. New line. She thanks the young boy and gives him another coin for his troubles. Period. The boy takes it and tells her his name, comma, William. Period. She tells him that that's a very nice name and that he ought to be off, comma, but tells him that if he is ever in need, comma, that he should come and see her, comma, and hands him a note with her address on it, period. New line. The boy takes the note and hurries off into the night, period. Mina watches him go, comma, sad to see a young one right before he leaves, comma, he turns to her one last time and says something hesitantly, comma, almost as if he is deciding whether or not to say it, comma, but eventually tells her that children are not the only ones that have disappeared, period. The tall man that helped him, comma, he told him that there were many others discreetly disappearing from the streets of London, comma, mostly children and homeless people, comma, but also the occasional traveler, comma, people that will not be missed, period. Mina thanks him for confiding that information with her. Period. William replies that he doesn't think the tall man would want him to do that. Confide in her, comma, but he doesn't think that Mina is a bad person. Period. Mina smiles, comma, though she is somewhat conflicted inside based on some of her past actions, comma, but she is grateful for the compliment, period. Then the two go their separate ways, period. All right, 1,200 words of story beats written. Okay. I think that's good for this one. So now let's go ahead and start preparing the super prompt. And I'll add a chapter here for chapter 4. So this goes in the chapter beats. And we need to make sure the overview is correct. Outline. Chapter 4. We don't need to include the character sheets for Arthur and Jonathan. Instruction style are good to go. Reminder's good to go. Okay, so let's. Oh, setting. Setting's the thing I need to change. So I'm going to do what I did last time. I really liked this. And I'm going to take my beats and be like, given the following scene, describe the setting for this chapter. Not quite. What was the prompt I used before? Let me quickly find this. Yeah, well, I can't really find it. So let's try that again. Given the following scene, describe the setting, details, but not the action of the scene. Yeah, let's just try that. Okay, some of this I'll keep. But let's just go ahead and take it into the settings section here. Actually, we could probably keep that. Setting is London, England. Time of day is nighttime. The environment is described as dark, shadowy, with smoky London haze. Other descriptors include boarded up, an abandoned warehouse, lone policeman guard, dangerous seedy parts of the city, back alley. This isn't as good as what I got before. I need to go find that prompt and mark it down. It is raining, making visibility and communication more difficult and makes the policeman clearly uncomfortable. Just add a little bit of conflict from the weather, because I felt like the scene lacked a little bit of conflict compared to before. All right, so let me walk you through some of the changes I made to this prompt, which basically solved the issues I was having on Saturday. So this is more or less the same, but I made one big change. Instead of saying a word count like 50,000 words, I asked it to do 500 paragraphs. And that alone wouldn't do it, but I'm finding slightly better results by asking for paragraphs than for number of words. The style remained the same, the characters remain the same, settings the same, overviews the same. And in the chapter beats, I added one key detail. And at the end of each chapter beat, I added something that said 100 paragraphs, which I know that 100 paragraphs for each of these beats adds up to more than 500 paragraphs, but I don't really care about that. We're just trying to get bigger results. I experimented with this a lot. I did like 50,000 words for each beat, and it worked. It gave me a lot of word count, but what it ended up doing is it kind of was trying to expand them so much that it ended up adding a lot of extra story detail in there, which got the whole scene sort of sidetracked. And so I brought it down. I tried it with 5,000 words, and that was working better. And then I started doing it with the paragraphs, 100 paragraphs, and that seemed to work well. Um, and then the reminder's all the same, except I say the 500 paragraph thing. And that was really it. Those were the big changes that helped. I was doing all kinds of experimentation with just like subtle word choices and things like that. And oh, the other thing I should mention is I've removed the previous chapter slash sample chapter. I found that it actually wasn't helping me as much as I wished it would. So I just decided to take it out. Seems to still be working okay. So I think this is done. So let's go ahead and pull up a new chat and run this super prompt and see if it does what I want it to do. Yeah, seems to be doing okay. Years of dance training, huh? We'll remove that bit. It might be going a little too fast through some of these things, so I'm going to probably try it one or two more times to see. But yeah, we'll see. The other thing you can try is take out half the beats and let it do that, and then give it the other half and do that. So you're essentially splitting the chapter in half. Um, not ideal for me, but that should work as well. Yeah, it's not giving me dialogue. Let me tweak this thing. Plus include plenty of dialogue between the boy and Mina. Might as well be specific. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. I'm not intending to use it. Try it again. This almost seems worse. Dang it. This guys, I promised this was working yesterday. This is my one issue with Claude. It's so unpredictable. But let's see if it gives me dialogue. No, it's not giving me dialogue. Include plenty of dialogue and past tense. Include lots of dialogue. Just say realistic dialogue. Try this one more time. Could also be the nature of the beats, because there's no like dialogue or anything happening at the beginning. Let me check these beats. I don't know why it's not including dialogue. Literally, there's nothing different about this except the actual beats. This seems different. Yeah, this is better. Just fingers crossed that when we get to the dialogue, it will write the dialogue. But it's definitely getting deeper into the point of view, so that's good. Yes. All right. This is our winner. Rename it. Chapter 4 winner. I like to clearly label these as the winners because sometimes I want to come back to these specific chats to expand certain sections of it. So I just want to make sure I know exactly which one is the one. Let's see if it actually finishes the whole thing. Because it's writing a lot here, so. It's even got like giving the kid an accent and stuff. This is perfect. Okay, it is continuing on off the end of the scene, but this is all it wrote for me. It seemed pretty good. 1,700 words. Not bad, not bad. It's about the most I've been able to get out of it, unfortunately. I think to get more, I would just need to give it more story beat information. Um, but it worries me a little bit because I've got like 25 chapters in this book, and I've got less than 2,000 words in each one, which means this thing will be less than 50,000 words, which doesn't seem right. I mean, first of all, to quote unquote win NaNoWriMo, you have to have 50,000 words. Not that I'm actually actively participating in NaNoWriMo. I'm not submitting the words or anything. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I may decide I need an extra chapter or two here and there. I think after today, going forward, I'm going to start getting into a pattern, and I'm pretty sure I can get 2 chapters done a night. All I have to do is write the story beats, which will take me about 40 minutes given my pace. And then I think in the remaining like hour and 20 minutes, I can clean up those words and do the editing for those chapters. So hopefully after tonight, we'll be able to do that. From now, though, let's see, I have to go here. Whoops. Froze on me. I mean, it gives me more than 1,700 words, but a lot of it is like words that aren't part of the scene. Oh, dang it, did it? Sometimes it like crashes. Well, good thing I grabbed those words when I did. Because now now I might not be able to chat with that thing. Okay. Let's go to chapter 3 winner. I just need to grab the words from this. Yes, 1,300 words. I actually feel like maybe I should rerun the prompt for chapter 3 because I feel like I could get better results out of that. We could try what I did. Adding some instruction in this little thing next to each beat. That seemed to help on the last one. Okay, I think this is better. Yeah, this is much better for chapter 3. So chapter 3, so we're kind of going back a little ways here because I just wrote the beats for chapter 4. Chapter 3, she's talking to Jonathan, Dr. Seward, and Arthur, and they're not as on board as she is, and she gets frustrated with them, and she talks to Jonathan, who's her husband, and basically, he's kind of PTSD about vampires. And the fact that she's a vampire now really does not set well with him, but he's trying his best. But they sort of get in a disagreement, and um, yeah. Boom. And this is 2,000 words. Much better. Much, 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 much better. Okay. So that was almost an additional 1,000 words there. Great. So there's another tip for you in the super prompt. Maybe in the first beat, in some little parentheses, give it a little bit of extra instruction, because I think that how it starts sort of sets the tone for the rest of the for the rest of the generation. So in this case, I just said get deep into Mina's point of view, but in third person limited, um, which kind of you know helps it to not be skipping over the scene too fast and just like covering everything really quickly, but actually getting in there and sort of dwelling on each moment and stuff. Excellent, excellent work here. Great. Yeah, of course I make modifications, Miss Player. And like I don't really care about copyright and everything. So let me show you something. Let's copy chapter 3, the 2,000 words that we just got, and go to originality.ai. Start a new scan. Paste that in here. We're going to detect AI and check for plagiarism. Give it a second. 99% original, it says. And 0% plagiarized. So, yeah. Basically, when you're doing, especially when you're using the super prompts like I'm doing, where you're giving it a lot of structure and a lot of words to go on, like my story beats are, more than half the size of the finished thing. Then, yeah. absolutely no reason to fear about someone calling me out on using AI. Though obviously, because I'm making these videos, I'm being very open about the fact that this is done with AI. But I'm also documenting the whole process, so it should be fairly easy to prove what is mine and that this is very much my idea. And yes, Honey Bun. So Dracula is in the public domain, so I can, of course, use it however I like. This is essentially a sequel to Dracula. I think what we're concerned about here is not the copyright of the source material, but like, am I going to be able to copyright this book? And I think I actually not sure. Um, a lot of it is mine. The story beats are all mine, and that's like a good. Like I said, the story beats for this is about 1,000 words, and it gave me 2,000. So even though the generated words aren't exactly my words, like it's still very much my written story. And then I do a lot of tweaking, probably not as much tweaking. Like it's probably only maybe 10-20% of the finished output was written by me. Um, like the actual words were typed out by me. Obviously, the story, everything is very much mine. But it's a good question, and I'll say for one, I don't know if I care if I can't get the copyright. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of input, Robin, coming in from me, and so I'm pretty sure I could secure the copyright, especially because I have all this documentation. I could show them, like, here, look how much I did, you know. Um, but I don't know if they count input as copyrightable, like all the input, all my story beats. I don't know. I will probably try. I'll try to get the copyright and see if I get it, and then probably make a video about it. But anyway, let's go to chapter 3 here and start editing. Speaking of editing. All right. Oh, I'm going to increase the font here for people so you can maybe see it a little better. And I'm sure you all want me to change this to Comic Sans, right? That what we all want? Just kidding. Could change it to Open Dyslexic as well. This one's actually, like, both of these, Comic Relief or Comic Sans, it's called Comic Relief here, and Open Dyslexic, are supposedly good ones to edit in because your eyes don't skip over things as easily. Something like that. That's what I heard. I don't actually know that from experience, but I'm just going to stick to the default here. All right. Mean and pace back and forth across the ordinary rug. Her footsteps muffled by the thick fibers. Back and forth, back and forth. As if she could wear a track into the floor. If anything, to work off the restless energy. Thrumming. I feel like thrumming is an overused word. Boiling in her. She paused, glancing over at the 3 men seated around the fireplace. Jonathan leaned forward in his chair, fingers steepled and brows drawn together in a familiar expression of concern. Dr. Seward sat with his elbows braced on the armrest, chin propped on his folded hands as he gazed into the flickering flames. Arthur reclined against the tufted leather back seat, one ankle crossed casually over his knee. Man, it got these people, like, their personalities so good. His face betrayed nothing but polite interest, but Mina sensed tension coiled in his broad frame. Good example of a phrase we don't need at all. Mina sensed tension. That's all we need. Arthur was the first to break the uneasy silence. Of course, there could be another vampire out there. But we killed Dracula after all. Surely that means any of his progeny would die as well. His lip curled faintly on the word. I'm Dracula's progeny. We can't make exceptions. Mina, Jonathan's gentle voice gave her pause. He offered a conciliatory dip of his head. Arthur has a point. It stands to reason that in No, he wouldn't say that. It's been 5 years. Don't you think we would have heard of other vampires by now? Mina pressed her lips together. Jonathan meant well, but he didn't understand. Not really, none of them did. With respect, I don't think it works that way. She infused her words with patience. Jonathan was only trying to make sense of the situation to derive order from chaos, as he always did. She couldn't fault him for that. And she knew the last thing he wanted to think about was more vampires. He still had bad dreams. He still woke screaming in the night from his own experiences. She couldn't fault him for wanting to bury his head in the sand. Honey bun. So my beats are not twice as long as the final output. They're about half as long. So 1,000 words gets me 2,000 words, or roughly, you know. But I understand. For me, it's not necessarily about like saving myself the time of writing the words. It's first of all, writing the beats flows out of my head so much faster than if I were writing the actual prose. Like, you see me pause occasionally to think it through, but honestly, like, if I were writing the actual prose, you'd be seeing me pause a whole lot more trying to think of what the next line should be in the next line and the next line. And honestly, you know, while I consider myself a good author, it does a lot of things way better than I do. Descriptions, sort of keeping track of where everybody is and how they move around the scene. There are things like that that I think it does better than me. And so this is sort of like getting a leg up. And then all I have to do is enhance it just a bit more from my perspective. And then it, you know, creates an awesome story. If killing one vampire ended their entire lineage, the species would have died out centuries ago. There must have been others beyond Dracula and his brides. We cannot assume they simply vanished along with him. Jonathan's shoulders slumped. I suppose you're right. He scrubbed his hand over his face. I just don't want to believe they could still be out there. Mina ached to go to him to smooth the worry lines from his brow and pull him into her arms, but she held back, sensing his settled tension in her presence. Ever since that night. So this is a good example of telling instead of showing. Well. Let's say, despite her frustration, Mina Smooth the worry lines from his brow and pull him into her arms, but she held back, sensing his settled tension in her presence. Ever since that night in the cemetery in Dracula's castle, when she finally turned, she had felt Jonathan withdrawing from her by inches. He tried to hide it, but she knew. Miss Player. So yeah, the GPT models I don't see making grammar mistakes very often, but I've seen it happen in Claude, not too often, far less than an actual human would, but I have seen it happen. Dr. Seward cleared his throat. Speculation will get us nowhere. What we need are facts. Good on you, Dr. Seward. Mina, you mentioned obtaining some documents at the docks. Grateful for the change of subject, Mina gestured to the folio resting on a side table. Shipping manifest, bills of lading, inventory lists. See, like, I wouldn't necessarily have known all those terms. The clerk had quite a cache. Jonathan, perhaps you could review them for any mention of the missing delegation. Missing delegation. We don't need that. Of course, Jonathan straightened his sink, warming to the prospect of a productive task. He collected the folio, reached out to collect the folio, and began sorting through the stack of papers. Mina resumed her pacing, grasping at the drifting ends of her thoughts. There was something she'd meant to ask, some overlooked connection. Don't need that. There's something she'd meant to ask, some overlooked connection. That could be a ... Jonathan, what do you recall of Dracula's brides while at the castle? Jonathan tensed, the color leaching from his face. I cannot say for certain. There were 3 of them, always flickering in and out of the shadows. Thank God I never saw them clearly. Or at least I don't remember much. Mina silently cursed herself for raising the traumatic story or memory. She started to move toward him, but caught the almost imperceptible tensing of his shoulders. Now, we already used the word tense. Stiffening. I can't spell. Instead, she folded her hands and took a subtle step back. Forgive me, I should not have asked. It was thoughtless. Jonathan dredged up a wan smile. Do not trouble yourself, Mina. It is natural to seek answers. Okay, so that's... this section we don't really need. Arthur didn't seem to have noticed their subtle, or their brief exchange, for he kept speaking. Surely, if there were vampires prowling London, we would know by now, he remarked. Tourists vanishing from busy streets, bodies drained of blood, turning up in the Thames. Such things would not go unnoticed. Mina bit back a flare of annoyance at his flippant tone. There are countless shadowed corners in this city where the missing and dead do not garner much attention. Attract. I noticed The language is actually pretty good on the whole, but sometimes it's a little archaic, and there's a balance to find uh, um, whether or not to use the sort of older language or to update it a little bit. I try to include some older language where appropriate, but sometimes I just see something and I'm like, nope, I've got to change that to something more modern. Arthur's mouth quirked in a patronizing smile. A maddeningly patronizing smile. My dear Mina, I realize you have personal reasons to see vampires around every corner, but try not to let your imagination run away with you. Mina narrowed her eyes, preparing to unleash a scathing retort. Can be show not tell. Just who did Arthur think he was? Did he not realize she could not only end his life in an instant, but turn him into a creature like her? Dr. Seward interjected in a conciliatory tone. Now, Arthur, we must not discount anything at this stage. While you make a reasonable point about conspicuous attacks, we simply do not have enough information to make assumptions. Spread his hats for now. We should be open to all possibilities. Arthur inclined his head in acquiescence. You are quite right, John. My apologies, Mina. Mina muttered her own apology, and no, she wouldn't. Mina only nodded before resuming her pacing, irritation nipping at her composure. She could hardly blame Arthur for his skepticism. After all, she had no tangible proof of her claims, only shadowy intuition and the certainty bone deep in her blood. Her sharpened hearing caught the slide of paper as Jonathan sorted through the shipping manifests. Give me a few days to go over these documents in full, but so far I see an inventory listing for the delegation's cargo. There's no reference to supplementary items being transported separately. That must include the mysterious flutes. Okay, I need to reread this. For the cargo. And there is reference to supplementary items being transported separately. Shall we say supplementary? Silver flute we're looking for. Very good. Dr. Seward nodded approvingly. See if you can find any mention of their destination or recipient. Even a name may give us something to go on. Arthur chuckled. I must say, I'm surprised our vampire friends didn't think to take those manifests for themselves. Seems an odd oversight. Mina did not slow her measured pacing, head high and shoulders back. If they were among the original smugglers, they would have no need. The information was already at their disposal. But the clerk implied the flutes went missing before delivery, Arthur counted. Surely the vampires would want to document the documentation to track them down. Mina arched an eyebrow. Perhaps some of the crew knew details beyond what was written. Before Arthur could respond, Dr. Seward interjected. In any case, we are fortunate Jonathan was able to treat is a lawyer. No, I believe it's a solicitor. These documents may provide useful insights. He rose from the chair with an air of finality. For now, I suggest we get some rest. We can resume our investigation in the morning. Arthur followed his example with a shrug, straightening to his full height with a roll of his broad shoulders. A sound plan. I will make some discreet inquiries with my associates about any rumors pertaining to our sharp-toothed friend. He inclined his head toward Mina. I do hope I am wrong about them keeping a low profile for all our sakes. I do hope you are wrong about them, but if they do exist in London, perhaps I will discover something. Mina gave him a brief nod. She could recognize his olive branch for what it was. As the two men made their farewells and quit the study, she added more wood to the dwindling fire. The repetitive motion soothed her, as did the cracking heat that would have scorched her vulnerable skin just weeks prior. As a human, she had always felt the cold so terribly. Odd that she would feel it less now that she didn't have a heartbeat. A floorboard creaked behind her. Jonathan approached, his footsteps muted by the plush carpet. She kept her face angled toward the hearth, hyper-aware of his tentative nearness, even as she pretended to focus on stoking the flames. Mina, Jonathan hesitated, grappling for words, appearing to grapple for words. Forgive me if I have seemed distant as of late. Mina set down the poker before turning to face him. His eyes were awash with sorrow and regret, her still heart clenched. We're tired and maybe a little sad. She swallowed. You have nothing to apologize for, Jonathan. I cannot imagine how difficult this is for you. She yearned to close the distance between them, but did not, granting him space. He scrubbed a hand through his hair. I just wish I could make sense of it all. Never would I have imagined. He trailed off with a shake of his head. Steeling himself, he met her gaze. But I am here. However I can support you, I will. Impulsively, Mina grasped his hands, resolve flowing through her at the contact. Resolve! Shrugging off her earlier hesitation. Your being here is everything, she said fiercely. We will work through this, I promise you. There are still so many mysteries to unravel about what happened to me and what we now face. Perhaps when Dr. Helsing returns. If Dr. Helsing returns. He shook his head. I don't know, Mina. It's a lot, but I want to make it right. They would find a way forward together, one step at a time. Light couldn't yet burn away the shadows that beset them, so long as they tended the flame. Yeah, we're starting to get a little mushy here. Here we go. Perhaps there was hope for their relationship moving forward. He spoke again, haltingly. Mina, there's something I must ask you about what you said earlier regarding the man he faltered over the words, regarding your feeding on that smuggler. Mina tensed. She should have known he would not let the matter go so easily. Have had a problem with that. Jonathan's moral compass did not waver. You said you chose him because he again, Jonathan trailed off. He pulled away and paced toward the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. That you chose him for his ill deeds. Is that truly why? Mina weighed her words carefully. I told you before I take no joy in it. But if I must feed, better it be on those who profit from innocent suffering. Jonathan flinched. Must you, though? Feed on living men? He turned back to her, eyes wide and desperate. Surely there are other ways. Animals, perhaps. Man, guys, this is such good. Like, this is good. Mina regarded him solemnly. She had known this day would come when they must have this terrible conversation. They had had this conversation before, though something seemed different this time. Perhaps it was her own guilt, knowing that she had acted impulsively when feeding on that man. I wish that animals could sustain me. Truly I do. Her voice remained soft, gentle. But this is the nature of what I've become. You know I would never have chosen it willingly. She thought of Lucy, made vampire by Dracula against her will, and put down by Mina's own hand before she could fully turn. Van Helsing. Actually, who killed Mina? Lucy. Lucy, Dracula. Doesn't really say, but it sounds like Van Helsing. I'm pretty sure that was it. Jonathan dragged a hand down his face. Forgive me, I do know that in my mind, but my heart. We don't need the heart. But his jaw worked, conflict playing across his features. Clearly. Playing clearly across his face. I cannot abide the thought of you taking a life. I know they are wicked men who have done horrific things, but I cannot see it as justification for them to be preyed upon. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, I mean, I cannot reconcile it. The quiet despair in his voice cut her to the core. If only she could soothe him to bring peace to his conscience, but she could not change the truth. They stood on opposite sides of a divide. She had no idea how to cross. You have nothing to apologize for, she said at last. She said after a long pause. Her own voice rang hollow. I understand how this weighs on your soul. I understand how complicated this all is. All I can ask is that you try to have faith. I'm doing. Is that you try to have faith in me. I really am trying to do what's best for the greater good. Even as she spoke the words, they tasted bitter on her tongue. This is a good example of like you're saying something twice. Like to say something tasted bitter You don't need to say on your tongue because the fact that it's on her tongue is implied in the phrase tasted bitter. So you can remove things like that. Jonathan stared at the floor. When at last he replied, his voice was hoarse with emotion. I do have faith in you, Mina. I know you would never willingly bring harm without cause. He lifted his eyes to meet her, bright with anguish in the firelight. Burning bright in the firelight. Now, reflecting the harsh light of the firelight. But understand, whatever the souls you take, no one deserves such an end. No one. I need some time. His quiet conviction struck her to the core. That's a very AI type sentence. You can just get rid of it, I think. For a long moment, the only sound was the pop and crackle of burning wood. Mina searched desperately for the right words, some way to bring bridge this impossible divide between them, but found nothing. Alas, she could only whisper, I'm sorry. I know this grieves you. Perhaps we could speak more when you are ready. For now, I think it is at best we both get some rest. Jonathan's face spasmed was something akin to guilt, but he merely nodded. You're right, of course. It is late. He managed a sad echo of his familiar warm smile. Things will seem less bleak in the light of day. I hope so, she said, but inwardly she thought, but not for me. With a murmured goodnight, Mina quit the study, moving silently through the shadows in her darkened gown. She did not look back to see if Jonathan watched her go. She was sure her heart could bear it. Wasn't sure her heart could bear it. Get rid of that. All right. And we've done a chapter. So I know we got to do chapter 4, which we just generated earlier. I'm going to actually just say I'm going to do this tomorrow morning and end the stream a little early because I need to film some videos about all of the new ChatGPT stuff. So thank you all for watching, for joining in. I know some of you, like Robin, Honeybun, I've seen many of you here every night, which is really great to see. I do have one more thing that I want to mention again, and that is, of course, my membership is open. I just recently, so I got to show you this. Hang on. So I had to take a screenshot of this. Someone posted this in the AI Writing for Authors group, and it was just awesome. I've been using the Nerdy Novelist training and can't say enough about his content. For a newbie like me, it's a lifesaver. I now have a grip on AI tools, which will be most useful to me at this time in my writing. His trainings are so well structured and knowledgeable, he should be knighted. I'll take that. I'll take a knighting. If anyone knows King Charles, and it can somehow, make me a British citizen so I can be knighted, I'll take that, please. But thank you to this person. Obviously left off their name here, but another person also recently reached out and said that they were just going to come in and take my free book and then leave, which some people have done. I'm not going to lie, but was blown away by some of the instruction in there, and I'm adding new videos to it every day. So if you're interested in doing more of this kind of thing and doing it with me, rather than just watching me do it, and you actually get to do some of it, then go check it out, storyhacker.ai. There'll be a link down below, And thank you. And thanks again for watching the stream, and I will see you tomorrow.